Welcome to Adventures in Solitaire. Today we'll be continuing our playthrough of StarForged. So as mentioned in the intro, today we'll be continuing our playthrough of StarForged. When we last left off, we went through our setup of the StarForged universe, that is the world that our character is going to be introduced to. We also went ahead and nearly completed the character creation process. Today, we'll be going ahead and finalizing that character process, but we're going to do it a little bit different. We're going to make that a part of the role-playing experience. So we're going to get to see why live our character as part of the story had their background vow established, where that came from, and we'll get actually experience that rather than talk about it. I thought that might be interesting and fun as well. Before we dive deep into that, I wanted to talk a little bit real quick about a setup and just kind of get a feel for, again, where we're at. So I did go ahead and print out a copy of StarForged. It actually did kill my printer about halfway through, so part of it's in color and part of it's not. But I did go ahead and get that printed off for just ease of reference for myself here. I also printed off the reference guide as well, which we'll be utilizing probably primarily through the series. I would actually recommend that if you can, go through the rules through the PDF, and then if you need to print off some material and you're like me and you just really need that physical copy, I would suggest just doing the reference guide because it contains pretty much everything that you're going to need, besides some maybe the more in-depth rule processes that the StarForged covers, because it actually will cover some of the basic rules as well as a reminder. Not that you'll probably need those by the time you get to it. I also thought, why not keep my stuff in a science fiction themed retro binder of sorts? So I actually have an actual authentic Trapper Keeper because I'm a nerd that way. And I have all my materials that we're going to need for that process in the binder itself. So we have our character sheet, we have our quests and our vows, and we have our sector map, and we have our contacts, all of which we'll be referencing. And last but not least, we have our paths and our starship in the way of asset cards. All right, so go ahead and get started. Of the things that we did not get accomplished, we did not write our background vow, we did not envision our character too much, we did not gear up. So I went ahead and took care of some of that because I could. And in the book, it kind of gives you some example stuff that you can choose. And of the example stuff that you can choose, you can just get that everybody's assumed to have. We got sealed environment suit, a flashlight, a headlamp, medkit. It says toolkit, but I defined mine a little bit more specific as an engineering toolkit because that's kind of what he does. Personal communicator. Of the things that I chose to have that's specific for my character, which you can do, I try to keep these within reason where it made thematic sense for my character. I chose stun lance, survey HUD headgear, which is basically kind of like think of it as like a physical device, much like you have like your night vision goggles in a way, where I can just kind of drop that down, or my character can drop that down and kind of use that as to survey and get information, kind of almost like binoculars. Mechanical climbing wire, think of that as kind of like your grappling hook that kind of pulls back and can kind of extend and retract. So you're basically, it's your typical, rope type scenario. Survey data tool, so this is something I can use to like put samples into for survey, test like what kind of rocks they are, test for biological things like that. And a collapsible pickaxe shovel combo, so it's kind of a 1-2 punch. It's collapsible. Now the one thing that probably does bear worth mentioning is the stun lance. I wanted to give my character some kind of weapon that they would need on a survey that made sense for a survey ship. I'm sure I can make an argument for an actual like laser-based or projectile-based weapon, but I went ahead and went with the something that was a little bit less aggressive because we are on a survey ship. Our starship is a survey starship. At least that's how I'm defining it, because it makes sense to the theme. It wouldn't make sense to be in a battleship or a cruiser or something like that. So we have a stun lance, and the way I kind of envision that is it's kind of like a rod that can easily attach to your belt or wherever you'd like it. It can extend on out. It can be used as kind of like a walking stick. Why not? Because you're surveying, exploring. It can be used as, to stun with, almost kind of like a spear, if you will. And it also is able to be reconfigured or work to where it can be held as an actual projectile. Think of it as like a single shot, kind of bolt action. You've got to reload it, or not reload it, but reset it to get a charge, and it can be fired off. So it's not something you're going to want to take with you in a firefight, but it's just good for just medium to probably more short range defense, and then the rod itself is good for close range combat. All right, so that's our equipment. To further flesh out our character, for his characteristics, I put down that he's an advocate, just an advocate for others or groups in general. If he sees some wrong being done, he tends to want to do something about it. He takes offense at abuse. He is a truth seeker. He is loyal, curious, solitary, antisocial. He is of average build, has short hair. He's a ship systems specialist and engineer. He is classified as what would be called an original settler, and he is also classified as just out of cryo. We'll get to that in just a minute. So let's talk about where our character finds himself, and we can do some initial setup for battles and things. Our character finds himself in a fairly familiar setting. He finds himself on his survey ship, his exploration ship, but he finds it in a powered down state. The characters that he was with, they were not part of any organization during the Exodus. In the Exodus story, one of the things that was pointed out was that people were left in cryo until they could be brought out to help establish a colony, and then they were continued to be brought out as more numbers and required crew were needed. They were not part of a group. They took their ship as is, and they made that jump. They also made that jump using the dark drive technology. So they had established a routine that crew members would cycle as needed to help with the exploration process of finding a good planet, or to maybe join a settlement or some organization. Basically, like everyone else, they were waiting around until they were needed, rather than just staying on board the ship until they ran out of food, sustenance, etc. So it was expected that when he would wake up, that he would be awoken to another crew member, that it would be his turn, or that everyone would be ready to leave and start their journey in their newfound home. But that's not what happened, and it's a little bit of an odd situation for him because, again, no one's there. The ship's in a low power state, basic facilities only, and he's greeted to an automated message, vocal message from the ship's computer. Basically, it's a system-specific trigger that would cause him to be awoken automatically. Now, he's a little out of it, which is also unusual because he's groggy and he's having a hard time getting his bearings, and he's not quite hearing everything about the message. But what he can see on the console for the cryo chamber is that he's been automatically woken up. As he explores the ship, he realizes that the crew's not there. And so this is where we are going to get our first vow or our first quest. And I want to talk about vows and quests because there are two separate concepts here, but I'm going to use the word quest interchangeably a bit. Quests are absolutely something that you have here. You generally will take a vow to do a quest. You don't generally have a quest without a vow, it doesn't seem. But I see quests and vows in the same way. Now, I think vows have a little bit more of a meaning in that there is some major loss or a net loss if you don't do them, and I think quests can be the same way, but vows just have a little bit of a heavier weight. But I see these vows as a driving mechanism, a core mechanic of the Ironsworn StarForged system, specifically Ironsworn, where that is the thing that gives you motivation. And you can have multiple of these running, much like you have side quests in a PC game. So there are going to be times where I will start a quest, but I won't necessarily call it a vow. but that I'm not going to put it there unless it has some weight or some importance. But I don't necessarily feel that I need to be making a vow every time I do a quest either. That seems a little over the top and emotional. If I have a major undertaking to fix the kitchen sink, I'm not going to go and hold some relic and say, I will undertake this vow to repair the kitchen sink. And that's overboard. That's obviously way apples to oranges, but I think you get the point there. So there will be times where I have quests that do need to happen. They're going to have some consequences, but I don't quite, And then maybe that's the way the system intended it. But anyway, moving on to stop rambling. Our first quest and our first vow is going to be that we need to find out what happened to the ship and crew. Now, I have made this a formidable piece because one of the things I have set that to kind of help with story is that not everything's going to be here on the ship that I need to know. I'll have something that will get me there, and how much of that's something I don't know yet, we'll find out together. But I made it formidable. So that just means it's going to take longer to fill this quest track, this vow. And once that's done, we'll have that completed and we can get rewards and experience and things like that. So the first thing that my character is probably going to do, what we're probably going to do, is we're going to take a look around the ship. What kind of evidence, what can I find on the ship's computers, etc., that would give me something, some bit of information. Now, I also know, because we set up a contact, and one of the things that I put on for the contact is to kind of help with this a bit, is how do we have this contact? And I put on that we have this contact because basically as we are exploring, as we would end up searching and finding, this has been kind of like a pen pal of sorts, as the crew's been either traveling or they've been doing whatever they've been doing for what the character will find out has been decades. As to how many decades, I'm not going to, it could be 50, it could be 40, it could be 70. Nothing too extreme, but nothing too shallow, basically. I'm not real concerned about the exact number. But during this process, they consistently communicated with this Rowena Beckett. And what he was able to determine is that this Rowena Beckett is a stern character, that they have some sort of a leadership role, but she's pretty secretive. And she generally would just share information about ongoings around this new pocket galaxy of sorts, the Shroud, and they would just exchange information, pretty much, and just talk. She had agreed to kind of keep them company, if you will. So what do we do to start this process for this quest? I think the first thing, obviously, we need to do is we need to take some sort of action, which in this system is called a move. So the first action that I'm actually going to take is I'm going to take an investigation action, which would qualify as gather information. And it's under the category of adventure, and it's page 10. So we'll go there. So gather information. When you search for clues, that's what we're doing. Conduct an investigation, that's what we're doing. Analyze evidence, that's what we're doing. Or do research. We get to roll wits. Now, I happen to have an asset for my character, which is part of his path, which is sleuth. And it says, when you swear an iron vow to solve a murder, disappearance, theft, or other mystery, make the rank of the quest no greater than formidable. Now you know how I got my formidable as well. Actually, that was more happenstance that I happened to set it there, and then I wanted to use. So that's pretty good. So then when you gather information in the course of the investigation, you can roll 3 challenge dice and choose 2. So it makes it easier. So there's some additional info here, and we can as far as rolling doubles on the challenge dice, but and we can look at that when it gets to it. But basically, it just makes it a little bit easier. It's kind of like rolling. It's kind of like rolling on an advantage with D&D. If you play D&D, and that helps. So we're gonna go ahead and use our sleuth path, and we're gonna go ahead and try to gather some information. We're gonna see what happens. So we're gonna roll 3 dice, and we're gonna roll our move dice, our action die, plus our plus 3 wits. All right. So we got a 9, we got a 6, and we got a 2. So the plus 3, we're going to get rid of the 9, obviously. We don't want that. The plus 3 that we get will get us 4. Now, our current momentum is at a plus 2, which would get us 5 if we took it. But we're not going to, and we'll talk, I guess I can talk about momentum in a bit when we really can use it. But I'm going to go ahead and keep the 1. I'm going to get my plus 3 wits. We're going to have a 4, and that means that we only had one success. We only succeeded once there. We need to succeed twice for what's called a strong hit. So we had a weak hit. It says, on a weak hit, the information provides new insight, but also complicates your quest. Envision what you discover, then take +1 momentum. So I'm going to say that the complication that we have here is that there's corruption in some of the data logs for whatever reason. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to roll to see what we find out besides that, of course. But we're also going to get our +1 momentum. So we're going to go ahead and do that for our character sheet. One of the things that I did not do is I didn't have any, did not prepare a way to keep track of my momentum easily with a slider of some kind, like a paperclip. So I'm going to go ahead and just manually track those. And I accidentally wrote that down wrong too. So we're going to be to +4 momentum. You start out at +2, we'll be to +4. And I actually put -2 on there. And we'll go ahead and circle these as well for all these others, because that's where they're at. All right, so the next thing we need to do is we need to figure out what we found as part of this investigation. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make an oracle roll. So that would be what's called a core oracle. And we're going to make a roll on that oracle table. All right, we roll a 61. So our first hint is leave. Our theme is 16. It's going to be leave, culture, 21, conspicuous. So now I got to figure out how to use that combination. Leave, culture, conspicuous. Okay, so that's not going to be quite enough for me. I'm not getting anything from that. Part of the reason is we don't have much in our new home or a history. I'm going to hold on to the leave, culture, conspicuous though, because I can still use those somehow, potentially. So we're going to keep rolling. We get 54, hunt, fellowship, captured. All right, I think we have what we need. So basically, in their process of trying to find find a place to go, they had investigated. That's what they do. That they left in the shuttle, because that's actually an asset in this game, like a shuttlecraft of sorts that you might have in the hangar bay of a starship. So I can't have that at start. That would be like breaking the rules unless I chose that specifically, and I didn't. So they took that. There were 3 of them in this crew, additional in this crew, a total of 4. And they left to go investigate. And whatever records that we could find when they went there, they were captured. So, or something happened there where they couldn't return. Something about a capture or being confined somehow. So with that, I don't know. I can maybe try and see if I can. I think it would make sense, because that's all I got, to try and figure out where they went to. If we know that at least this much happened, I think it makes sense that we're going to know something more. So for that, I'm going to roll on the space sightings until we get something that makes sense. All right, so we rolled a settlement. Makes complete sense. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to find out something more about the settlement. We rolled a 9. It's planet side. Okay. So we're going to need to start marking down some information. I'll do that real quick off camera. All right, so we have a planet side settlement that I've written down. I don't have a name yet, but I do need to know what kind of planet it is. I think that's some basic information we can ask for easily without having to do too much here. So we'll have 85, and it's going to be a rocky world. We also need to determine star type, and it'll be a burning yellow star. Okay. So what do we know now? We know that they left, they didn't come back. It looks like they were probably captured. For what reason we don't know, and we need to go rescue them. Now, I still qualify this as what happened to the ship and crew, right? We still don't totally know the full extent of that. Now, according to the rules for advancement on these vows and quests, for quests, we have this thing called Reach a Milestone. It says, when you make headway in your quest. And I do believe that we made headway in our quest. So, in particular, this is a formidable quest line, what happened to the crew. So, formidable allows us to completely secure one full box there. So that's what we've done. 1 out of 10 there. So, you'll note that on the star map here, I've added a new star and settlement or planet area, and I also went ahead and added it here. But what I didn't fill out was I didn't fill out what the name is or the population, right? Or the type of law or really much of anything else about it. We just don't know. I figured that made thematic sense to the story. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to make a move. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to say that we're going to take our ship to the destination. Now they would have taken the shuttle. No sense putting the entire starship in danger when they could take the shuttle. So I'm going to have to take the starship, to which I do. We're going to go ahead and consult the Oracle to see if there's anything that happens to within scanning range, like pretty decent scanning range of the planet. I don't think that they probably were captured on their shuttle. I think it probably happened after they got down. But I do want to see if something happens in the way there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do an Oracle. And ask the Oracle move, which is going to be unlikely is when I'm going to put it out. We're going to roll. We got a 93, so nothing happened. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to investigate with the ship to try and see what we can see. Now, I know that they had to go down there and that they discovered something unusual. I may not be able to discover the same thing that they did. It may have been a timing issue. But I at least want to obviously prep and try to get as much information as I can. So I may treat this as a two-part move, but the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to treat this as a quest piece, or not quest piece, but an adventure move, and we're going to gather information. Let's see if our sleuth thing will apply here. I think that it would. I'm just going to say that it would. Hopefully you agree with me on that I'm not pushing that mechanic too much. And we're going to make a roll. We have a 10, a 5, and a 3. So we're going to get rid of the 10. We have a 1 plus 3, which is going to be 4, which doesn't beat the 5. I'm good at rolling these ones. And we got a partial success, so I get plus 1 momentum. We're now at a plus 5. So now what I was going to do is I was going to use this time to secure an advantage, but I'm going to say that the weak hit, that complication means I don't get enough information that it's going to allow me to secure any major advantage. So that's not even an option now. So I was going to gather information, use that information to secure advantage. Now I can't. So so we need to envision what we discover. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go back to the Oracle. We'll make our rolls. Get a 75. Reject. Bond. Constructed. I'm going to go ahead and do another one. 45. Industry. So we got reject, bond, fortified, industry. So
we'd rolled that they had rejected a bond, something about constructed industry. And I did some more rolling, and what I ended up with was something for location themes, because I'm looking down on the location. And I know this isn't really meant to be like specific location, like a small, like something as small as a town or whatever, which is fine for me in this, and that I found a town or a settlement or something that they would have directed themselves to, and it's something about mechanical. And when I went to the mechanical, and I also realized that I had the first look option as well, which I thought would pair well. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to roll in the first look, and I'm going to roll in the mechanical table to try and get a little bit more information. Because my thought on this is that the way this is headed is that this rejected bond, to me, bond is similar to vow. This settlement has rejected their vow, and we're gonna dig on that a little bit. This constructed piece is interesting, and I want to play on that too. And I'm trying to figure out what that might mean. I think I know where this is going, but we're probably going to end up heading, but we'll see for sure. And we're going to go 22. It says built within terrain or asteroid. So I'm going to say built within terrain. But it's possibly maybe they're trying to hide what they're working on, which would make sense. And now I'm going to go ahead and roll on the mechanical feature. Mechanical environment in motion or transforming. Well, that doesn't sound too great. Especially with the word transforming, given we know about this universe's past. When this technology starts to take over, it can transform, can take over them somehow, and transform the environment as well, the mechanical environment. So not so great. So this is all my character was able to see and kind of determine with both the information on the computer And with what he's seeing down in the planet from afar, with what sensors he has available on the ship. Now, I also want to kind of bring something up here, in that, and it's something I kind of failed to realize and failed to mention, is that we already have settlements established. So here's the curious point: my character's been asleep for a while. There's obviously enough going on here that they could have woken him up, and they could have already become part of a settlement. So why did they not wake up my crew? How long ago did that ship leave? I'm assuming it couldn't have been that long ago. Was it all of the crew that was on the ship, or did some of the crew pass? These are things I don't know yet and couldn't get due to the system corruption on the computer, because I couldn't ask any more questions. This is definitely a very scary place, because I'm alone, and I may well end up in a situation where I'm going down to this rocky planet. The crew member could have been gone for some time, but and things could have gotten worse down there. But we're gonna go ahead, and I think we're gonna try to prepare. I think a little bit. I'm gonna do a few things. I'm gonna check and see if I have equipment on the ship where I can make an EMP. Now, I don't know much about this alien race. I'm assuming the EMPs will work unless they're EMP shielded somehow. So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check against my supply, which would be check your gear. And I want to see if I actually have what I need to do what I'm going to try to do. I don't want to just assume that I have it. And we get a +5. Get a 2 of 5, so we definitely do. We get +1 momentum. And we're going to go ahead and we are going to use our gearhead ability. We're going to use our gearhead ability using a recover move to resupply. Now, in this particular one, what we're going to do is we're going to use the scavenger craft. Now, it's not the scavenge piece that we're going to use, it's the craft piece, because it does state craft, repair, repurpose, or modify. So, we're going to roll plus wits, and it says that when we do this, we get to add +1. So we're going to +4 to our die roll. All right, we rolled a 2 and a 6. We rolled a natural 6 on our die. We got a strong hit. It says we acquire what we need, and we take +1 momentum. I'm not going to give myself a +1 momentum, to be honest, because I've kind of already done that. And it feels like I'm getting momentum pretty quick here. So just because of the number of strong hits and the fact that I dodged the momentum, I'm going to go ahead and give our character a couple of EMP, like some EMP, we'll call them grenades. We've got those together. And at this point, I think that we're going to go ahead and attempt to kind of land out of the way of, or do our best to come in like under the radar. So for this, we're going to treat this as we're going to see this as an expedition. Now, I may be doing this wrong, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call it an expedition, because I was trying to figure out how I would go about it. I can't treat it as combat where I can use some of those combat moves for this, and I probably could in a way, but I think, because it says, when you trailblaze a route through perilous space or journey over hazardous terrain, or survey a mysterious site, and it has some of both of these. And given that when we look at our star map, we can see that there are already established settlements here, right? And this one was just discovered, like it's not on the maps. Okay, so even if it was on the maps, I still think it would be fine to do it this way. But this is what we're gonna do, and you guys can scold me later for it if I'm taking advantage somehow, and I'll just learn from a mistake. I'm also going to go ahead and I'm going to label my different vows and quests with capital letters. And then what I'm going to do is anytime that there is a sub part of that quest, I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to put down a lowercase of that letter and then a number indicating which one of the, like because there might be multiple subquests. We're going to name this one. We're going to call it Investigate Mechanical Site. All right, we also need to assign this a rank. So the rank on this, I think, is going to be, we're going to give this one Dangerous. Maybe I'm trying to get my character killed right now. I don't know. We'll see. And generally, what I'm going to try to do basically is try to make my way to the initial landing site, or get as close as I can. I'm going to say that we at least have that information. It makes sense that we would. So when we're going, I have a few choices. I can move at speed, keep under the radar, or I can stay vigilant. I don't want to move at speed. I definitely, I'm trying to stay hidden, sort of. I think maybe we're far enough out that I can probably, at least right now for this leg of the expedition, I can just move on and I can just stay vigilant. So I'm going to go ahead and roll wits. All right. So wits is good. We have a strong hit. It says on a strong hit, you reach a waypoint and vision the location and mark progress per rank of the expedition. Okay. We get 2 boxes. At this point, I'm going to say that the next step that we go on is going to be closing in on the site itself. So what we need to do is, because we're staying vigilant, we need to kind of describe what we're seeing on the way, what we might be running into. 38. All right. So as we're kind of working ourselves along, we see evidence of machine fabrication or repair. Given the current trend on topic, I'm going to assume that there is repair work that's being done on this blended mechanical organic type stuff. So I guess my question is this being done by humans or is it being done by something else? So I'm going to say it's 50-50. I hope it's not something else. All right, it is humans. So as most of the stuff's going to be, I'm assuming, hidden and obstructed, I'm going to say that I'm just seeing evidence of it and that I can see people here. I would normally maybe want to try to roll to get an idea of how many people are here, but given that it's hidden, I feel like that's information that I shouldn't have access to. So there are people that are there, but at this point, I think that I'm going to need to try to sneak in. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to close in a little bit closer to our target, and we are going to try to stay under the radar. Not good. We got a 9, a 5, and a 2. My shadow is only 1, so I got a 3. Man, this is not good at all. If I forgo my die and I go ahead and I reset my momentum, then I will get a 6, and I can add my shadow, which would be 7. I think I probably ought to do that. I don't know. Maybe it's too early to do that. So let's talk a little bit about momentum before I go on, for those of you who are maybe not aware. And let's talk about some of these rolls I've been doing. So whenever you are trying to figure out whether you're going to be successful at something, you're going to roll, typically you're going to roll your a 6-sided action die. And then what you're going to do is you're going to typically get one of your attributes as a modifier. So if I rolled a 5 on a 6-sided die and I was using wits, for example, then I would get an 8 because my wits is 3. Sometimes, however, it will say that you roll a 6-sided die and you'll add, say, one of your conditions, like not your conditions, but your statuses, like your health, your spirit, or your supply, right? Sometimes it will be that you're rolling something else that you add to the 6-sided die. But irregardless, you'll roll and you'll add that modifier, plus any other modifiers that you may get, such as through your assets. But once you have that final value, you're going to also compare it to a couple of other dice that you rolled, all right? And you're going to roll both of the dice, and you're going to come up with a value. What you're going to then do is look at your die roll plus your modifiers, and you're going to compare it to those values. If you do not beat any of these values, and you do have to beat them, not meet them, right? If you do not beat any of these, it's called a miss. And misses are generally very bad, right? You can kind of think of misses as, almost to me, the way they feel in this system is almost like a critical miss. Almost. They certainly can be. It just depends on what you're missing on and why. And the game will explain that fairly clearly, I feel. If you beat one of them but not the other, it's what's called a weak hit, which generally means that you did accomplish what you were wanting to do, but there's a little bit of an extra hitch to it. And it'll, I think, do a reasonable job of explaining what that hitch is for each situation. It's specific to each move that you're doing. If you're successful on both of them, then it's called a strong hit. So the one thing this system doesn't have is just normalcy. But you are going to get a strong hit, and that will either just do what you're wanting to do, or more often, it will secure you some advantage, which is really good with this system because things can go bad pretty quick, and especially if you're flying solo. So you'll gain things like momentum, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. But you'll gain things like momentum or future additions for future successes, or just progress towards your quest. There's just so many different ways that you can be benefited by a strong hit. Now, momentum, which is one of the most common things that you're going to gain through a strong hit, is on the left-hand part of your page. And with momentum, the way that it works is you have a resting value. And that resting value can be lowered, it can be raised, but you have a resting value of momentum, and it's at 2. A resting value of 2. That value doesn't mean much to you. It will in a second. As you continue to be successful at things, you'll increase your momentum. It'll go up. And right now on my sheet, I have 6, and we're gonna use that number as an example. So let's say that I rolled here, and I rolled a 4, and I had no modifiers. It was just a flat 4 for whatever reason. Or let's say my modifier was 1. I was rolling Shadow for whatever reason. I would have had a 5, which would mean with a 9 and a 5, I would have a complete miss. I could go ahead and do something called resetting my momentum. And that's basically a way of saying I'm going to use that momentum I've gained to try and secure a success. So when I do that, when I choose to reset my momentum back down to its default value of 2, I have to clear my momentum, bring it down to 2, I get rid of my die, and I'm going to use the new value that I just sacrificed for my momentum, which would be 6, add my shadow, that's +1, that's 7, it doesn't beat the 9, it does beat the 5, and now I have a weak hit. So at least I'm successful. So that's kind of how the system works. Now you can use assets and other things to kind of change how the die rolls are done, and try to make things a little bit easier on you when you're trying to accomplish certain tasks. But I did want to make sure that we covered that before we move too much further, because I'm going to be doing a lot of these rolls and possibly using some of these systems. All right. So I did not succeed at the sneaking. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to sacrifice my momentum to bring it down to 2. That'll give me 6 plus my 1 of shadow, which is 7. And that'll give me a weak hit. Now, on a weak hit, it says, suffer, cost, and route. Make a suffer move, or a suffer move of -2, or 2 suffer moves at -1. Or I can face peril at the waypoint. Envision what you encounter. I think I'm going to go ahead and suffer peril at the waypoint. Alright, so let's roll for our peril from the mechanical location theme and see what we come up with. It says moving machinery creates a danger or an obstacle. We're now seeing moving parts around the area, and I'm going to say that it looks like the salvage pod it's already being made part of the process, that there are individuals out there that are taking apart the ship, and they're trying to repurpose it. I'm also going to say that it's mostly whole. I don't want to kill our investigation outright, because I would pretty much do that for sure. But there are going to be people there. So at this point, I can do a couple of things. I can initiate communication, or I can initiate combat. Now, given that they don't want anything to do with outside space, and given that I'm an outsider, given this situation, they know exactly how extreme what they're doing is. I'm pretty sure that this is not going to go well, and it's going to go just as well for me as it did for my past crew, or at least the crew man, or whoever, how many of them went here, I don't know. So I feel like, I don't know, I'm going to have to come up with some way to get to that ship and deal with these individuals that are in the way. And so I've got a few options. I can try to maybe create a distraction somehow to get them away. I can engage with them in combat, because my character's kick bottom at combat. But anyway, so we're not going to be able to do combat with these people. I don't know. I guess it depends on how many of them there are that are there. So I think what I'm going to do to kind of keep this simple, to keep this fair, is I'm going to take a 6-sided die. We are outside. I don't think it's going to be a lot of people. I think that that would be fair. So I'm going to roll a 6-sided die and kind of get a feel for how many people are there. I'm going to say it's 1 through 6 is probably pretty fair here. There is only one person. All right. I'm going to go with the RNG on this one. I am. You can slap me around for it. I'm doing it. There is one guy. So what I'm going to do, because I know there are going to be moments where the RNG is not in favor of me. I'm going to roll 6s or 100s in ways that are not favorable to me. So I'm going to take any kind of RNG success that I can get. So I'm going to go with a 1. And I think now that I know that it's a 1, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to initiate combat. Now, combat is done very much like it is with anything else. I'm not going to make this a sub-quest, I don't think, because I don't feel like it's going to put traction on this. Now, it may put traction on here for the expedition, but it's not going to advance the main quest. Now, I'm going to also say that this particular one is just going to be troublesome because we're dealing with one individual. Also, we forgot to advance our expedition here, so we're going to do that real quick. So, we need to get to combat. We are going to prepare to act against an unaware foe, and we need a roll plus shadow. Okay? Now, right now, we are down to a +2 momentum, which means that if I were to exchange it, I would just have a 2 on my die roll for momentum. So momentum is pretty much going to be useless for us. All right, well, we got a 10, and we got a 2, we got a 3, so we got a partial success. It says, on a weak hit, choose one. I can take 2 momentum, or you are in control. I'm going to go ahead and say that we are going to be in control. And I probably need to get a card or something that shows and helps me remember whether we're in control. But we'll just do our best to remember that we're in control. Okay, so the other thing that I didn't do is I didn't kind of write down what we were trying to do. We're trying to knock out this individual worker. And so at this point I have a couple of options. I can gain ground, or I can strike. I think it's probably more appropriate because we've already kind of done the thing to sneak. I think that we're going to go ahead and just move on to strike. Now, this is going to be edge, which I have a 2 on, thankfully. And so we're going to roll and see what happens. All right, we got a 3, and we got a 9, and we got a 3, +2, that's 5. And that would be a weak hit. We mark progress twice, but we expose ourselves to danger. You're in a bad spot. Basically, the way that I'm going to envision this is that we move to strike the opponent. We do actually end up hitting them with our stun lance. We do so at range. We fire our weapon because we haven't completely closed range, and we have a situation with our baton because he's going to end up being able to close range now, and I'm going to say that we are having to struggle with getting that weapon converted from its ranged position to its melee position, because as I had stated earlier, the stun lance is a configurable tool. It can be used as just a general staff. It can be used as kind of more like a spear-like weapon for stunning, not at range, but putting distance between you and your target, a little bit of distance between you and your target. And then 2, it can be converted to assembled into a quick range weapon that you have to kind of reload. So that kind of puts us in a bad spot. So he gets hit with the weapon stun, but he's able to kind of shake that off a bit. We'll say that it hits part of his suit, and that energy transfers, and that he's still, he's hurt, he's wavering a little bit, but he's still able to continue on. So that'll put us into the next spot. So we're either going to be doing a clash, a strike, or a react under fire. We're going to say that this person probably doesn't have a ranged weapon, probably wants to try and close the distance to engage with us because we're not that far away, and that he's going to attempt to hit us here. Clash says that when you are in a bad spot and fight back. Strike says when you're in control. So I'm not in control, so I can't do strike. React under fire is also in a bad spot, but it says when you are in a bad spot and take action and to avoid danger or overcome an obstacle. I don't think that's really it. This one says when you're in a bad spot and fight back against a foe. So I think that that's it. So we're going to go ahead and roll. This is going to be, we're going to say it is going to be at close quarters, which does not favor me. I only have a 1. And that's going to be against iron, because I feel like he's going to try and close the distance. He sees me fumbling around. All right, got a little lucky here. We got a 6 when combined with our iron, and which is what we have to roll for close combat. That's enough to have a weak hit. It says we mark progress, but are dealt a counter blow or setback. You stay in a bad spot, and we must now pay the price. So we were able to kind of, I'm going to say we haven't quite been able to get this stun rod out. We're still fumbling. So my character sees him coming up. He's able to kind of shift out of the way of the incoming strike, and he's able to kind of parry and then move on with the strike, and then hit him with the metal piece that he's got. I say metal piece, the staff, maybe not the staff, but what he's trying to get into his staff, make into his staff. So now we need to look at pay the price. Now this will be the first time I've had to do pay the price, and we're going to kind of go over that. Go over that pay the price. It says, when you suffer an outcome of an action, choose one. Make the most obvious or negative outcome happen. Ask the oracle for inspiration or interpret the answer. Roll on the table below. If the result doesn't fit. So I said that I kind of deflected and then hit, but I'm going to actually say that the most obvious thing here is that I'm probably going to end up being harmed, because there's a lot of options on this table that just don't make sense. So I'm going to do two. Here's the way I'm going to handle this. I'm going to roll on the table. If it makes sense, we'll do it. If it doesn't make sense, I'm going to take a hit. All right, we rolled a 71. Now 71 would be that we waste resources. Waste resources would be supply, and it doesn't necessarily mean that something's damaged. So what we're going to do is we're going to reduce our supply by 1. We're going to say that as we're struggling with him and we make that strike, when we did actually do what I said. We were able to deflect and then strike. We're going to say that in the process of doing that, I'm still trying to ready this thing, and I ended up using up one of the some of the charges, like a charge module for the staff. So that ended up reducing our supply there. To be clear, supply is pretty much anything that you might have. It could be food, it could be rations, or it could be any number of things that you might consider as just general use supplies. So we took a hit there, and it would have been a major hit. Okay, so next round of combat, we are still in the situation of being in a bad spot, and we're going to go ahead and clash once again, and we're going to be rolling against iron once again. Our iron is 1. We got a 6. We failed twice. It's a miss. Your foe, so as I'm trying to continue to struggle to get this thing up, and he's hitting at me, he's trying to hit me, we stay in the bad spot, and we must once again pay the price. Now in this case, I'm going to say that pay the price is pretty obvious. I'm going to say that pay the price is going to be a hit to our health. I'm not even going to bother rolling on the table on that, because I think that's just way outright too obvious. We're going to go ahead and go again, once again on this clash. All right, we rolled a 1, a 2, a 5. This is a strong hit. We mark progress twice, and you overwhelm your foe and are in control. So generally, my character is not the kind to want to kill. He's just not that type of person. I mean, he will if he has to, but it's also something he probably would mentally struggle with, and it would also be the first time he's ever done it in his life. He's actually not been really in any combat situations outside of maybe school ground fisticuffs, right? And maybe only once or twice, and it never was really anything serious. You know, it's the standard, like bravado stuff that you see on a school or a playground. So he's not about killing, and I say that because he ends up, when he's fighting, he ends up, instead of just stunning, he ends up hitting the opponent. And he uses, of course, what he's got. He's in fear. He's in fear for his life. He's never been in this situation before. He's in hostile territory. He's alone. and he strikes with this rod, and he hits him, and he hits him hard. There is definitely blood in this situation, and his target, because it's with a strong hit, you mark progress twice, and though this isn't a health bar, it definitely would go well beyond what he needed to do to take care of this. And unfortunately, it puts him down. Now, this is probably going to bother my character a bit, but he's not going to check on the character because he's in a tense situation. And he's going to make a move to, I think, from here to kind of start checking on equipment. So this knock out a worker piece is done. So next up is we are still investigating the mechanical site. We've now made it to our target, and we need to investigate the ship. So at this point, I think that there's a couple of different things we can do. We can use scavenger if we need to do anything from there, and we can use sleuth. Now with sleuth, we're going to roll, as we investigate the wreck, I'm going to roll an extra 10-sided die because that's what it tells me to do, and it tells me to remove a die of my choice. So I got a 9, a 6, and a 1. We're going to remove the 1. It is a wits. We get a 4. We are partially successful. This will be gather information. So the information provides new insight, but also complicates your quest. Envision what you discover and then gain 1 momentum. So let's go ahead and let's do the momentum now. We're also going to mark progress on our investigate mechanical site. So we're not done here yet. Almost done getting everything we can, at least from this side. And we're going to also bump the what happened to the ship and crew. All right. And then what we're going to, because it's a chain. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to find out what we found here. We're going to go back to the Oracle. So here's what I'm going to say for this. So challenge, rumor, obscured. So I'm going to say that while we're working on this ship, so far what I've learned is one or more of the crew discovered or had gotten information, possibly through their contact, that there was a rumor of a settlement that was going, the one we're talking about now, that was doing the things they're talking about now, was working, and that the information was obscured, they were hidden, and that they were taking up the challenge to go and investigate that. To see what was really going on there. Again, we still don't know how many of our crew went. We don't know why I haven't been woken up yet. That's still up in the air. Don't know why. But that definitely is enough, I think, to advance that by 1, and definitely enough to advance that by 1. So we still need to do some more investigation here. Now, and we did advance that. I'm going to go ahead and continue asking questions, but I'm not necessarily going to use that as an advancement unless it's a major deal that just kind of closes things out here. But I'm not going to try and game it to where that happens. So I'm going to say that that's pretty good odds that that's going to be something that we can ask there. I think that it's likely that there's more information, so we're going to roll for a 75 or less. It's 43, so there is more information. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go back to the Oracle here. And we're going to see what else we can learn. So I've rolled the 4, I think, where we're going with this, but I need to know something about the crew. I'm going to find out exactly how many of the crew have actually survived, and what I'm gonna or here. All right, so right about the time that I was looking for a nice die to kind of fit the theming of the die that I already had. Because I like to make my dice. I like to choose dice that look good, or kind of fit the color scheme or whatever. I don't know. As I was trying to find that, once again, this is actually the 4th time that I've sat down to record or continue recording. We've had an extreme heat wave, and so you'll notice I have a change of outfit because I'm not going to keep wearing the same outfit over recordings over multiple days. But our heat's hit over 105 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's literally been causing issues with electricity. It's been causing issues with overheating of my equipment. Our AC has not been able to keep up. It's not been good. So
Anyway, we're going to go ahead and make our roll to see how many crew were on board at the time. There was only one. Well, that's 3 crew, and where did they go? Which is great. I love that because that gives definitely gives us a reason to have this be formidable, and that just makes sense. So we know that there was 1 crew here. The other thing that I found out was I rolled the from 4 different tables to try and get up to the bottom of maybe what else the crew had found or what have you. Just kind of piecing together all the puzzle pieces and trying to find the interconnecting threads as my character was going through there. And what I found, or what I got, was constructed, immersed, blood relic. Immersed, I'm going to say because this goes down into the earth, this settlement. That makes sense. So inside this underground system, the crew had determined that my characters determined that were actively working on constructing or working with. It says blood relic. Now, in this case, blood relic, blood meaning I'm thinking like human, like flesh, because that's about all that we had to work with here. Relic meaning obviously within theme of what we've got going on within our universe. That would allude to either the relics that they have found since they've come here, or relics of our past, meaning that combines flesh with machine kind of concept, which makes sense. So they're working on doing that now. So this makes me feel like this either is some sort of like cult type thing going on here, where they've had to break from society, where they've had to break from the norms of society and the other settlements to make this happen, or 2, they've somehow become enthralled somehow by this malevolent force that forces out of our home galaxy, which is not good. So definitely more needs to be found out here. Now, our goal is to investigate the mechanical site. It's not to say find out what's going on with this cult, etc. It's just to do a basic investigation. So I think that would be like a separate quest, and we can figure that out if we wanted to, though I think that would be incredibly dangerous for a character, especially them being alone. So we know how many were there. We know they're not here anymore. I don't think that we're going to find any evidence that the crew is there, but I do want to continue trying to search and see what we can find. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I am going to investigate a little bit further. Now, I have 2 options because we are doing an exploration. I can either explore another waypoint, just advance a little further, or I can try to finish the expedition with what progress we have. Right now, our progress total is 6 out of 10, and I think that's really pushing it. So, and not to mention, I'd like to see if I can find out just a little bit something else, and this is definitely pushing our luck. So, what we're going to do is we are going to now it says, actually this says when you divert from an expedition to examine a notable location. So I think what we're instead going to do is we're going to set a course. It says because it's across hazardous terrain or within a mysterious site. So let's go ahead and let's roll and see what happens there. All right. We end up with a 10 and an 8, and it is versus supply, which is 4, which is 7. It is a complete miss. That is not good at all. It says, on miss, you are waylaid by a significant threat and must pay the price. If you overcome this obstacle, you may push on safely to your destination. So we're going to go ahead and look at paying the price. We're going to go ahead and we're going to make a roll on the table and see if it makes sense. We got a 95. It says you are delayed or put at a disadvantage. Let's go ahead and let's roll on an oracle for that one. All right, so here's what I'm going to say. As we begin to approach this, get closer to the settlement to see what we can see and try to maybe navigate our way there, our character experiences weakness. In this case, we kind of talked a little bit about how they might have become enthralled. And I'm going to go ahead and roll on a question just to see if this is where I think it's going to go. And it's going to be a 50-50. Is this weakness being brought upon by some external force, or is it just simply from exertion from the fight? My character's not used to fighting, and I'm treating it obscured as in vision issues. Like the weakness is causing me to have vision issues. Either way, it's something that would cause my character to want to back off, maybe go back and regroup. So what we'll do is we'll say anything below a 6 is just normal fatigue, and anything above a 6 is going to be external force. Or sorry, not above a 6, but above a 3. So it is an external force. All right, so at this point, my character realizes there's something not quite right, and it's not normal. And he does have a choice. So I'm going to say at this point that my character actually has kind of made another discovery, that it is not a cult. It is indeed a situation where they have been enthralled or compromised by this dark space entity or entities. Nobody really knows what they are. So at this point, what I'm going to go ahead and do, I think I'm actually going to mark progress for that one, to be fair, because that was, I think, a fairly major discovery, and I don't know that that's kind of the way that was meant to play out, but it was information that was gained, whether intentional or otherwise, and I'm going to mark it. I don't think it's going to hurt to do that. Sometimes we learn through our failures, and at this point, before my character makes the way back, I am going, or as he's making the way back and he's kind of contemplating what's going on, we're going to try and see if we can roll for progress on this expedition. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to roll these challenge dice, and we're going to, instead of rolling any attributes that we have, we're going to roll it versus our total for what we've learned so far. So it's going to be 8 versus whatever comes up on these dice. So what we have is we have a 1 and a 4. So we definitely had it. It's a strong hit. You reach your destination or complete your survey. Make a reward on the Discovery's legacy track per the expedition's rank. So we're going to do 2 ticks for dangerous. All right. I've marked that complete. And I think that we can also make an advancement on our what happened to the ship's crew. And actually, we're going to wait on that until we get back to the ship, I think, to kind of just make it feel a little bit more, more complete. All right. So I'm going to ask the Oracle whether or not we encounter something on the way back. Because right now we've only engaged one person. Don't necessarily know that they're really in communication with everybody. We've managed to be pretty quiet otherwise. And we're going to roll to see if we make it back. The 1 through 3, or without any troubles. 1 through 3 is a yes. 4 through 6 is a no. It was a no. So something happened. All right. All right, so it says strengthen unnatural isolated, and I can't come out with much here, but and normally I'd say we need to make a roll against something for this, but I'm gonna say that when I made that roll to see if something happened, that the presence, whatever, that my character is having to fight that, and that kind of builds upon the miss earlier and kind of puts it a little bit more closer to home. In that it's actually affected his spirit. So we're gonna lower that down by 1. I know I'm being hard on my character, but I also want to kind of be fair. I don't want to be in a situation where I feel like I'm gaming it. So that's what we'll do. At this point, I don't think there's any reason to make any more rolls for anything. We can say that we make it back to the ship, and we'll go. Once we get back to our ship, we go and get on board. We secure everything. We take off. And we kind of get ourselves back to that natural, I'm going to call it anchorage, but that spot where we had initially left our ship. We had woken up on our ship. And from here, we would need to kind of figure out what we need to do next. But I'm going to go ahead and advance by 1 rank what happened to this ship and this crew. Now it says the next move that we probably want to take is to end the session, and that's where you'd reach the milestone. But I already did that, so I'm not going to add another milestone. It says if there's a quest, connection, or other situation that you would like to get focused in your next session, make note of it and take +1 momentum. So at this point, I have got who is Rowena Beckett, and I had already filled this out. And you have to forgive, this is like day 4 of my recording, of attempting recording, and I don't remember if we talked about this. So
But who is Rowena Beckett? We don't know who that is. We know that she's consistently referenced, and given that she's the only point of contact for the crew, she's the only person that we know of that might have more information. The next step is to try and figure out, see if we can contact her, find out where she's at. And I think the other point to kind of think about here is that, we kind of almost in a way effectively left our crewmen behind. But at the same time, our character was being assaulted by this otherworldly presence, this dark space presence that's so strong there. I can't imagine that they would. I can't imagine that they would have been compromised in some way. But either way, our character is not prepared to deal with that. I mean, for goodness sakes, we know through history that entire fleets were lost. Of course, this may not be a strong presence. I would have to suggest that it probably wasn't, because this settlement's been here for a while. If it was a strong presence, I imagine it would be much more developed. So I'm getting this, the feeling that I'm getting is this side is this slow creep, if you will, but it also feels this slow creep is gaining maybe in momentum. Like it's like on a curve of growing in strength as the site becomes more and more compromised, and as they play more and more with this tech and the relic and the dark steel technology and everything else. So, in fact, it wouldn't surprise me if they had a dark drive there as well. They're messing around with. So that's our next step that we're gonna go towards, is to find out who is Rowena Beckett. I don't know how many of these we're going to do. I do know that my initial intent for this playthrough was to kind of go through the various systems of StarForged to give players a feel for what it's about, what that learning process looks like, as well as that I can learn, etc. And so there will be a point where I feel like I've covered enough of it that I can move on to a full review to give my thoughts. So those are my closing thoughts for this gameplay session. And as always, if you've listened all the way through or not, thank you so very much. And I'll look forward to seeing you again, hopefully soon. Thanks.